When you picture a medical diagnosis in pop culture, there's like a very specific archetype we're all used to seeing.
Oh, definitely. The lone genius.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
It's that brilliant, usually quite grumpy maverick doctor who just, bursts into the room, stares at a patient for 5 seconds, looks at a chart, and then boom.
Yeah, they have this sudden flash of heroic intuition.
Yes. They solve the impossible case that literally everyone else missed, and they do it completely on their own.
Which makes for incredible television drama, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Watching one person seemingly outsmart the universe is highly entertaining. But behind every correct diagnosis in the real world, there is rarely a lone genius.
Right.
Instead, there's this invisible story of teamwork, of culture, and of systems. And conversely, behind almost every missed diagnosis, there is a system failure.
Okay, let's unpack this, because today we're doing a deep dive into source material that completely shatters that pop culture myth.
It really does.
We're looking at a framework called the 7 Golden Tools, and it's basically a roadmap designed to transform how healthcare professionals think, how they decide, and how they collaborate.
All to achieve what the sources call diagnostic excellence.
Right, exactly. The mission of this deep dive is to explore how we can, rewrite the very DNA of clinical decision-making to eliminate the tragedy of misdiagnoses.
And we aren't just looking at medical trivia today. I mean, this framework is essentially a masterclass in human reasoning and system design.
Oh, totally.
It applies to hospitals, yes, but the mechanics of how we make decisions, how we manage our egos, and how we build environments that prevent mistakes, it's universal.
Which is why this matters to you, listening right now. I mean, you've likely been a patient, or maybe you've sat anxiously by a loved one's hospital bed, just completely trusting the system to get it right.
Right.
But today, we're looking at the hidden gears of how they get it right, and why, sometimes, they just don't. So let's jump straight into the first 2 of these golden tools, which focus intensely on the individual practitioner's mindset and how a hospital actually measures success.
So the first tool demands a pretty massive mindset shift. It requires moving the culture of a hospital from rewarding certainty.
Like a doctor saying, I know.
Exactly. Moving from that to rewarding curiosity, where a doctor says, I verify.
Okay, wait. I have to play the skeptical patient here for a second. Because
Yeah.
if I'm lying in an ER bed, in pain, feeling totally vulnerable, I want my doctor to be absolutely certain.
Of course you do. That's a natural reaction.
Right. A doctor walking in and saying, I'm not certain, sounds completely terrifying.
What's fascinating here is that false certainty is actually the biggest danger in any high-stakes environment.
Really?
Yeah. When a clinician is pressured by the hospital's culture to always have an immediate answer, they'll often just latch on to the first plausible explanation.
Oh, wow.
In psychology, we call that premature closure. The ego gets involved, and once a professional says, I know, their brain literally stops looking for alternative data.
So the brain just takes a shortcut and shuts down the investigation entirely.
Exactly. So normalizing the phrase, I'm not certain, let's explore this together, it isn't a sign of weakness or incompetence.
Right.
It's actually the ultimate clinical wisdom. It means the doctor is keeping the diagnostic window open until all the evidence is in. They're actively fighting against premature closure.
They're basically saying, I have a hypothesis, but I am going to verify it instead of just guessing and moving on.
Precisely.
Which naturally shifts how we measure success, I guess, bringing us to the second golden tool, which is focusing on outcomes over processes.
Yeah.
Because the sources point out that healthcare absolutely loves processes. Forms, checklists, pathways, protocols. There is a form for every possible scenario.
Right, but the illusion of process is that following the steps somehow equals doing a good job.
Yeah.
A hospital can develop a culture where everyone is obsessed with asking, did we tick the boxes? But, ticking boxes doesn't save patients.
No, definitely not.
The real question needs to be, did we reach the right diagnosis at the right time?
It's kind of like baking, isn't it?
How so?
Well, you can meticulously follow every single step of a cake recipe. You measure exactly, you stir for the right amount of time, you bake at the exact temperature, you follow the process perfectly.
Right.
But if you accidentally grab the salt instead of the sugar at step 1...
The outcome is a total disaster.
Exactly. And if your boss only asks, did you follow the recipe? You'd say yes. But nobody wants to eat the cake.
That's a great analogy. Checklists and protocols are meant to support thinking, not replace it.
Yeah.
If the culture shifts to prioritizing the outcome, actually getting the right diagnosis, then the way rounds are conducted changes, handover changes, teaching changes. You stop managing paperwork and start managing cognitive results.
But getting that correct outcome requires gathering all the clues. And clues rarely present themselves neatly to just one person.
That's very true.
That means we have to look at the people surrounding the individual decision maker. So tools 3 and 4 are all about democratizing the diagnosis.
Right.
And the sources use a phrase that really stuck with me. They say, diagnostic errors thrive in silence.
That's such a powerful line because in a traditional hierarchical hospital, you have this very rigid power dynamic.
Yeah, the classic hierarchy.
Exactly. The senior attending physician is at the top.
Mm.
Below them are junior doctors, then nurses, and often the patient feels like they're at the very bottom.
Right.
So if a senior doctor makes an assumption, the system often makes it incredibly intimidating for anyone else to point out a flaw.
Which means tool 3, shifting the balance of power, is really about empowering the powerless.
Exactly.
Like nurses need the authority to literally stop the line. Juniors need the confidence to challenge seniors. And patients must be able to raise red flags without feeling dismissed.
Because from a purely data gathering perspective, hierarchy is terribly inefficient.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it restricts the flow of information. A nurse might notice a subtle change in a patient's breathing that the senior doctor, who, was only in the room for 5 minutes, completely missed.
Wow, yeah.
If the nurse is too afraid to speak up, that vital piece of diagnostic data is just lost forever.
I'm thinking of the culture inside, like a truly elite, high-end restaurant kitchen.
Okay, yeah.
It's an environment where the dishwasher has the power to tell the head chef that the soup is burning. Like everyone has to check their ego at the door for the sake of the final meal.
Yeah.
The hierarchy is flattened in the name of the outcome.
That's exactly it. But this raises an important question.
What's that?
How can an institution actually expect a junior doctor or a nurse to speak up?
Yeah.
To challenge a senior figure if they are totally exhausted, burnt out, or terrified of being reprimanded?
I mean, they won't. They just won't do it.
Right.
And that is the core of Tool 4. Focusing on staff more than the service. The sources state bluntly that you cannot put patients first if you put staff last.
Exactly. We love the noble idea of patient first, but reasoning is a biological function. It requires energy.
Right.
Reasoning thrives when staff thrive. So to flatten the hierarchy and actually share insights, leadership has to create an environment of psychological safety.
And the sources outline exactly what that environment looks like. It requires reduced cognitive load, protected thinking time, and a critical shift toward coaching rather than policing.
Yes. If an error occurs, or even almost occurs, and the immediate response of leadership is to punish, to police, the staff's psychological safety is instantly destroyed.
Oh, for sure.
The next time someone has a doubt, they'll just stay silent to avoid the spotlight. And we're right back to that silence where diagnostic errors thrive.
Yeah.
So culture has to be based on coaching, where errors become data points for learning.
And I guess you can't ask a clinician to untangle a complex medical mystery if their cognitive load is just maxed out with administrative busywork.
Exactly. An overwhelmed brain defaults to quick, assumed answers. It defaults to false certainty.
Okay, so let's assume a hospital actually achieves that. The staff is rested, their cognitive load is manageable, they feel psychologically safe, and the hierarchy is flat.
A dream scenario.
Right. But that's great for morale, but good morale doesn't automatically equal good science. Like, how exactly do we ensure their thinking process is actually accurate?
That requires shifting from culture to hard, evidence-based tactics, which is tool 5.
Because diagnostic error is not some mysterious, unpredictable force of nature, right?
Not at all. It is highly predictable, it's measurable, and therefore it's preventable. Tool 5 is all about abandoning tradition and implementing evidence of what actually works.
Right. And the sources list several circuit breakers. They mention structured handovers, second checks, feedback loops, data-driven learning, and cognitive forcing strategies. Let's pause on that last one because cognitive forcing strategies sounds incredibly dense.
It does sound like a mouthful.
Is that basically just a mental speed bump? Something that forces a doctor to consciously consider alternatives before just ordering a test?
That's a highly accurate way to visualize it, yeah. Our brains naturally want to take the path of least resistance.
Right.
So a cognitive forcing strategy is a deliberate mental roadblock. For example, before diagnosing a patient with a really common benign condition like heartburn, the system might force the doctor to explicitly document why this isn't a heart attack.
Oh, I see.
It physically forces the brain to slow down and consider the worst-case scenario first.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. The sources also highlight a diagnostic timeout.
Yes.
Now, if a timeout in a basketball game breaks the other team's momentum, I imagine a medical timeout is breaking the momentum of the hospital itself, like stopping the chaotic rush of the ER from dictating the care.
It's close, but it's actually about breaking internal cognitive momentum.
Oh,
Yeah, it stops the dangerous momentum of an incorrect assumption.
okay.
In a medical context, a diagnostic timeout is a deliberate, structured pause. Even in the middle of a critical situation, the entire team stops for a brief moment to literally step back and ask, what else could this be?
Wow.
Does the data actually support our current diagnosis, or are we just trying to make the pieces fit?
So it physically enforces that I verify mindset we talked about earlier.
Exactly.
And you can see how heavily this relies on tool 3, because a diagnostic timeout is entirely useless if the senior doctor just barks their opinion and the rest of the team is too scared to disagree.
Yes, all these tools interlock.
Yeah.
You cannot mandate a timeout if there is no psychological safety.
Right.
The timeout takes the pressure off the individual to be brilliantly intuitive and relies on proven, data-driven guardrails instead. It shifts the brain from fast, automatic thinking, which is prone to bias, to slow, analytical thinking.
I mean, a timeout is great for catching an immediate mistake right there at the bedside, but what about the chain reaction of errors that might have started hours or even days ago?
That's the big question.
Yeah, like a timeout catches the ball before it hits the ground, but what threw the ball in the first place? To answer that, we have to zoom out to the macro environment of the hospital, right? Tools 6 and 7 tackle the wider system.
Yeah, if we connect this to the bigger picture, we move into Tool 6, systems thinking. This is the realization that errors are almost never just individual.
Right.
When a diagnosis is missed, it is rarely because one doctor simply forgot a fact they learned in medical school.
The sources paint this really vivid picture of the anatomy of a medical error. It's basically a cascade.
It really is.
Let's say a patient comes in with subtle chest pain. Triage is completely slammed because of a staffing shortage, which
Yeah.
is our first system issue.
Right.
So the patient gets categorized as low priority. Then the lab machine for running blood work is down for maintenance, causing a 2-hour delay system issue number 2. A shift change happens, and the handover is just a hastily scribbled note because there's no standardized form. Finally, a new, exhausted resident reads indigestion on the note and discharges the patient.
And that's exactly how it happens. Systems thinking forces the institution to look at that entire diagnostic journey.
Yeah.
The crucial shift here is in the question leadership asks after an incident like that occurs. The traditional reactionary question is, who made the mistake?
Like point the finger.
Exactly. But systems thinking demands we ask, what in our system allowed this to happen?
Because asking who made the mistake implies there's just a bad apple. Fire the bad apple and the problem goes away.
Which is never true.
Right. But asking what in our system allowed this realizes that if you put a good apple into a terrible system, you're still going to get a bad result.
Exactly. But once leadership fully embraces systems thinking, they inevitably run into a massive roadblock.
Oh.
They look at their hospital and realize their system is just a tangled web of legacy workarounds, patched together software, and outdated protocols built up over decades.
Which brings us to the final piece of the framework. Tool 7, ideal design.
Yes.
The sources argue that too often, hospitals just try to fix the broken legacy system they already have. But ideal design asks, if nothing existed, how would we design the perfect diagnostic experience?
Right.
You work backward from the ideal, add only what is essential, prototype, test, refine, and scale.
It's a completely different approach.
It reminds me of dealing with a severely glitchy, outdated computer.
Yeah.
When your laptop is running slow and programs keep crashing, the traditional approach is like running 10 different antivirus programs, downloading patches, trying to find the one corrupt file hidden deep in the operating system.
Yeah, you spend hours fighting the legacy system.
Exactly. But ideal design says, stop, wipe the hard drive completely and just build the software you actually want from scratch.
The challenge, of course, is that you can't simply turn off a hospital, wipe the slate clean, and reboot it while patients are relying on life-saving care 24/7.
Right. People would die.
So how does an institution actually implement ideal design? They create a shadow system, or what some call a micro-ward.
So they isolate the experiment.
Exactly. They take one specific unit, perhaps a single floor, specific care team, and for a designated period, say 1 month, They strip away all legacy paperwork.
Wow.
They remove the redundant processes and implement only the bare essentials designed for that ideal diagnostic outcome.
That's fascinating.
They run this micro-ward and rigorously measure the outcomes against the rest of the hospital. Once they prove the new design works, lowers cognitive load, and improves diagnostic accuracy, then they scale to the rest of the building.
That is a brilliant way to innovate without risking the entire operation.
It really is.
It strips away the useless processes and builds an environment where the staff can actually think, ultimately circling right back to tool 2, better outcomes.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean? Let's bring all 7 of these golden tools together. We started down at the micro level with the individual clinician shifting their ego aside, right? Moving from I know to I verify.
Right.
And ensuring that verification focuses on the outcome,
Yeah.
not just blindly following a checklist.
And from there, we looked at the team dynamics. Democratizing the diagnosis requires flattening the hierarchy, making sure every voice is heard.
Yeah.
But that's only possible if leadership protects the staff's time, manages their cognitive load, and creates psychological safety through coaching instead of policing.
Then we explored the hard science of prevention abandoning tradition to use evidence-based circuit breakers like cognitive forcing strategies and diagnostic timeouts, all to stop the momentum of a bad assumption.
And finally, we zoomed all the way out to the macro level. We applied systems thinking to trace the complex chain of events that lead to errors, and utilized ideal design to methodically wipe the slate clean, creating an ecosystem that actually supports human reasoning.
The result of all of this is an ecosystem where clinicians think deeply, teams speak freely, and learning never stops. It is a total transformation from relying on the lone maverick doctor to relying on a brilliantly designed system.
And as we wrap up this discussion on diagnostic excellence, I want to leave everyone listening with a final thought to apply outside of healthcare.
Oh, I like this.
Because we've spent this time talking about hospital wards and clinical settings.
Yeah.
But consider your own life.
Taking the framework out of the hospital.
Exactly. Whether you're leading a team at work, managing your personal finances, or even navigating a complex personal relationship, are you relying on your own heroic intuition? Are you just trying to project confidence and saying, I know? What if you implemented a diagnostic timeout before your next big life decision? Stepped back and verified the data before acting on your first assumption?
Like giving yourself a mental speed bump.
Exactly. Or consider the recurring problems in your life or your business. What if you stopped asking who is to blame for these issues and started asking, what is it about the system I've built that allows this to keep happening?
That's such a good point.
The principles of diagnostic excellence are ultimately a framework for making better decisions in every facet of life.
So the next time you find yourself wishing for that brilliant lone maverick to swoop in and solve your problem with a flash of heroic intuition, remember that the real hero is the system that makes the maverick unnecessary.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the 7 golden tools. Keep questioning the systems around you, keep verifying, and we will catch you next time.